Welcome to A Tale of Two Scribes. I'm your host, Eric P. Bishop. This is a place where interesting people come to talk about their creative outlets. As for myself, I'm an author, podcast host, travel enthusiast, and lover of the outdoors. If you'd like to learn more about my published works or adventures, go to my website, ericpbishop.com. I hope you enjoy the show, and please go out and support today's guest. Thanks, and enjoy the journey. Welcome to a new episode of A Tale of Two Scribes. So tonight I am pleased to have Tracey Devlyn with me. Hey Tracey, how are you?
Hey,
Thanks for
how
coming
you
on.
doing?
I'm doing
Thanks. Thank you
great.
for having me. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. So I will tell the audience sometimes we jump on these things and if I've never actually met someone or actually spoke with them, I might be like, "Hey, let's talk for a few minutes." So it's not like jump into it and be like, "Why did you ask me that question?" So But where I wanted to start this, we're going to get into books for sure because you've got a list of series and stuff that I'm very interested in hearing about how you crafted them, especially with working with others. But like we talked about a little bit offline, we are both actually not super far from each other, which is always small world. So we're in Western North Carolina, which I believe is on your website. So it's
Yeah.
common
Yeah.
knowledge you're in Western
Cool.
North
Yeah.
Carolina. So didn't say this ahead of time, but so what brought you here? How did you, or have you always been here?
No, I lived in Illinois all my life until about 5 years ago,
Okay.
and my husband had retired, and I was still working full time and doing the writing thing at the same time. And we started looking for different places to retire to because I don't know why people think that you can acclimate to cold weather because I never did in all of those years I lived outside Chicago. Not possible. So we knew that we wanted to go someplace a little warmer, maybe a little bit more
A little more.
temperate
Yeah.
than Chicago's extremes on both sides of the temperature of
Right.
the thermometer, I should say. And we came to Asheville, came to this area,
Hmm.
and really loved it.
Yeah.
And we had a whole list of places that we were going to go to and check out, but we just kept coming back to North
Kept coming
Carolina and
back.
kept
Yeah.
coming. It felt like home really quickly.
Hmm.
So when it was time for me to pull the plug on my full-time job, yeah, we came out here and we're in the foothills out here in the Blue Ridge Mountains and just love it.
Yeah. Same way. So we talked a little bit about it beforehand, what got me down here. We were living in Richmond at the time when I was married. But we had actually lived out we met in Carolina. That's why I just wanted to leave South Carolina. Not because of her. We lived here. I was in South Carolina. We went out to Colorado. I didn't want to leave Colorado. Like Colorado,
Mhm.
I loved. But I lost my job out there and it was 2004, I believe. And it's weird because Colorado is normally one of those places where they'll cut jobs but they're one of the first places to then bring people back. Like,
Yeah.
so if there's a downturn, it normally goes up quick. Well, it wasn't. So I lost my job and I was out of work for I think 3.5 months. And to this day, it's the only time in my life since I was like 10 years old that I wasn't working. At 10, I
Yeah.
wasn't working full-time job, but I had a paper route. And let me just tell you, that's
Right.
work when you're 10 years old and you're getting up at
Absolutely.
6 in the morning to sling papers at people's windows and stuff.
Got to
Um,
fold up the paper, put the rubber bands around it, and all of that,
I,
right?
I had a bike with the bag on the front of it, and they got stuffed in there as the first thing I do in the morning. And then you'd have the elastic bands, you'd go through like water, and yeah, it was crazy. But so I'm out in Colorado, and I have no job, and we went and visited Seattle just to kind of like, well, where else would we possibly go out west? And she was a nurse, so anywhere we moved. Literally, by the time the plane lands on the tarmac, they're already and they haven't even met her. They want to offer her a job because nursing is so high demand.
Yeah.
So we go out there. Of course, they offer her a job at the hospital out there, and I said, "Well, let's go." So I'm not doing anything. Ironically, the job she had was, and I respected it. It was super stressful. She had kids die on her. She was in a
Mm.
PICU department, so she was miserable. Hated
Yeah.
it. I loved it. I was like, this is so great. I got a really good job out there. And I was just like, crap. So the company I was working with had a headquarters in Richmond, Virginia. And so I was like, well, why don't we go to Richmond? I don't want to go back to Connecticut where I grew up, and I'm not moving back to South Carolina. Those are my two rules. Little did I know how I eat my
Yeah.
words years later. But yeah, so that's what kind of brought us back east. But then when we did finally go back through South Carolina and I ended up in North Carolina, I love this place. So I was kind of very like, I'd always be like, I miss the Rockies, but the Blue Ridge has really like stolen
Yeah.
part of me. So
Yeah. Yeah, we do a lot of hiking along the parkway of the different
yeah.
parks and things like that. And it just, even where we live here, there's a couple of trails and things like that that we walk the dog on. And I just love it. In Illinois, everything is like flat, like
Hmm.
super flat, right?
Right.
Here, it's just, there's always something to see. And it's just, oh, yeah, it just feels very homey and very comfortable and just
Yeah.
us.
Have you been up to Grandfather Mountain?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit ahead, before this about, just disasters. Right now, LA is, as we're filming this, it's still on fire
Yeah.
currently, which is a horrific thing. And then we both
Heartbreaking.
experienced, to some degree, the flooding that came through here at the end of September with the hurricane.
Hmm.
I had never been to Grandfather Mountain. I'd been all over, spent a lot of time, like you were saying, the Parkway, Black Balsam, and Mount Pisgah, and just Mount Mitchell. I've done a pretty good stretch of it. Done a lot of day hikes up there, especially, and some camping. Um, but one of my buddies was turning 50 back in September, and we go out and we do hikes together. He actually came to my house yesterday, and we did like a six mile hike. And I said, "Hey, have you ever been to Grandfather Mountain?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, neither have I. It's a little bit of a drive, but let's go do it." So we went there. We did the suspension bridge and everything. That was the Sunday before the hurricane. So
Oh,
about 2 weeks after the hurricane hit, we had kept in contact because he's somewhere nowhere around where the flooding was bad like that. He's more on the Carolina side, and I'm on the North Carolina side. Um, but I reached out and I talked to him, and I was like, "You realize the place we probably went for ice cream and like all those little towns? I mean, if they're not destroyed, there had to
yeah.
be so much destruction there because a lot of what we drove into to get to Grandfather Mountain was a lot of valleys,
Yeah.
in which all the flooding and stuff. So
Yeah, the mountain towns really got hit hard.
yeah."
Yeah, it's they're still, yeah, as you know, they're still recovering.
Hmm.
And like as we said offline, it's going to be quite a while, and some of the places will never look the same. I mean, even where I'm at, I'm more in the foothills.
Hmm.
We didn't get the flooding in our area, but we did get the trees overturned. I mean,
Yeah.
just uprooted. These trees just not broken off. They completely uprooted.
Yep.
And I mean, it's like dominoes in some of the places around here where the trees are just down, laying down.
Yeah.
And so will that ever get cleaned up? Probably not. So that,
I know.
that's just going to look like that for years and
For
years. And
years. Yeah.
yeah, it's just something. It is something.
Yeah, my buddy and I, we went down to, I guess I shouldn't admit this because it's federal land, so they might come after me if they play this, but we went down to Cowpens Battlefield yesterday, which is close to my house. So I go there. It's just a good place to get out. You can get off the trail quickly and just, yeah, it's just, I'll go a couple times a month normally, which is funny. I've lived here for years and I never went to the battlefield. And then I bought a house out here and I've probably been 100 times the last 3 years or something like that. But they have a bunch of their trails that go, they have some nature trails that go through the woods and they're all like roped off. And so we get up to there and that's the purpose of going down there. And it's roped off and I'm just looking at my buddy. I'm like, I'm a taxpayer and I own this land. I'm going on it. It can't be that bad. I'm a tough mountain person. I hike and I go to Yosemite and do all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, like there was parts of those trails where there was 6 or 7 trees, like just one after another, uprooted and
Yeah.
laying on the trail. And these weren't like, 6-inch trees. These are probably like 5 feet circumference trees, 6 feet in full circumference, maybe more.
Mhm.
Yeah, we had to either climb over them or go find a way around. And a few times it's like, where's the trail? Can't even, because we had to go so far out of the way that you come back and you're like, we're gonna be these people that's on the news. Like poor Tracy's not gonna get an interview because
Yeah.
there'll be a search party out for me and I'll be it was so cold last night I probably would have died of exposure. I mean,
Oh my
geez. So
gosh.
but no, it's an
Yeah.
adventure.
One of the I guess most bizarre things I've seen with all of this is just right off of I-40 coming from like the Asheville, Blackwell, Old Fort
Hmm.
area, and then east towards where I'm at. There's a railroad tracks that runs along I-40 there for a little while, and um the soil and everything that was holding the tracks up
Hmm.
is just gone.
Just
So
eroded,
that
yeah.
the railroad tracks normally like this are like this, and it's just
Wow.
it's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's just things you just never would have thought you you'd see in a lifetime.
Yeah. Well, what
It's
they say, I
scary.
think pretty much at least on in the news and stuff, they said it's like a 1 in 1,000 year flood for most
I
of
hope
those.
so.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope so.
I know.
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
a friend that does volunteer work up there, and he'll load up what it's kerosene or propane, whatever, but he'll load up a truck and a trailer full, and he goes up with some regularity, and and he had messaged me, and he'll tell me kind of some of the stories of what he's seen, and he said, people are still living in tents, and
hmm
the last couple weeks around here, we actually got snow, which we hadn't had in 3 years, at least where I am.
yeah, I got
It's been in the
to.
teens or maybe low teens to high
Hmm
teens, but really
Yeah,
cold. And, it's definitely made me sit down at a few nights and be like, just give thanks. Say, you know what? I have a house. I have knock on wood, my central air and heat pump still working. I do have heat. And if I didn't have heat, I have a Lowe's close by and I can go buy space heaters and I have the ability and the money to be able to go buy stuff and blankets and,
yeah,
I'm safe. So,
yeah.
um, I think it's the one, it's kind of like what's going on with stuff in LA. It should hopefully give people perspective that's not there, that give them a little bit of appreciation of saying,
hmm
you always think you're kind of safe and secure until you're not. And
Yeah.
man, that not can happen quickly,
hmm
especially with the fires out in LA right now. I mean, those are just like these people are getting like 4:30 in the morning, warnings on their phones or whatever, saying not just be careful. It's like get out, leave.
Yeah.
Uh,
Leave now.
yeah, and I even thought about that with hearing the news. It's like I didn't have my kids one night and watching things on the fires, maybe like last Thursday or Friday, whatever night it was, and I thought, okay, like literally they told me, hey, you need to get out now. What would I grab? I know I'd grab like my computer and some hard drives with pictures. And if you, well, yeah, a computer I gotta have. I mean,
That's the same thing I would grab first as my computer. It's very sad.
although I think I'm okay because my retentiveness on getting scared that I'm going to lose stuff, besides having multiple backup drives and one of them's in a fireplace safe or fireproof safe, is I literally will email to my several of my accounts. I'll email a copy of the manuscript as I'm working on it. So I go, if it all burned down, as long as I can get the Gmail,
Yeah,
I'm
all the
okay.
cloud storages can't go down at one time.
Unless that EMP goes off. If that EMP goes off,
Yeah, then
but
we're all screwed.
I don't think I have to worry about finishing that book.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for
So.
sure. Yeah.
Well, hey, let's talk into what got you into this crazy world of writing. Because most people I talk to, very few ever say, yeah, I just decided one day to get up and write a book. Normally, it's something that starts much younger. Even if they don't write when they're younger, it's a desire to write. So when did that fire start for you?
That fire did not start for me. I'm a little bit of an anomaly, I think, in the writer world
Okay.
because it wasn't until I was in my late 20s.
Okay.
Um, I I grew up in a household where there were no books.
Hmm.
There was no appreciation for libraries, none of that.
Okay.
And so I didn't even really find fiction until my mid 20s,
Wow.
So,
Hmm.
but once I found it,
You were hooked.
I was hooked and I consumed a lot,
Mhm.
and I mean a lot. And yeah, there was at some points where I think I had two or three books. This sounds so cliche, but there were two or three books where the endings just didn't sit well with me. I'm like,
Right.
really? And I don't know, and now that I've been writing for a while, it could be that they were on deadline. It just wasn't a very fulfilling ending. And there were a
Yeah.
couple of them in a row. I'm like, I could do better than this. And so I don't know. It's just one of those weird things where that happened, and then I took what I termed many, many years ago and is now used quite often, but I took a mental health day from work and sat and watched, of all things, Jenny Jones,
Okay. I
and
thought you were going to see Jerry Springer, but okay, good. Jenny Jones is probably
not
a
quite,
little better.
not that much different. And
Maybe not.
she had a panel of authors on there, and they
Interesting.
were romance authors.
Okay.
And so I went out, and that's when I got my first romance book.
Hmm.
And man, did I tear through it, and I didn't know anything about happily ever afters. And there was one point I was just like bawling, because I
Oh,
thought the
goodness.
hero was dead. And so anyway, I started reading a whole bunch from that, and then I got to the point where I thought I could do better, and I went out and I got a book on how to write a book, and I'm like, I think I could probably do this. Let me give it a shot. And I just started writing, pen to, I mean, this is literally pen to paper at that
Right.
time. And yeah, so that's how it started. And once I started, I haven't been able to stop. So
That's a common theme. Typically, when people get going, every now and then someone will just write a book and be like, "That's it. I either have nothing else to say, or I hated the process. I wasn't happy with what I wrote, so I'm done." But most of the time, you finish that first book and you're ready for the next one. And
yeah,
I've talked about it with other people even recently. It's like the hard part about it is you strive for so long to finish that first book. And for me, it wasn't until my fourth book that actually got published. So I have three books again sitting on the cloud and hard drives and everything else in case it all gets destroyed. Where
yeah,
I got it redundancy because I would like to do something with them one day, but no, maybe a dozen people have read those books so far, not very
yeah,
many. I think they're good, but they weren't good enough in the agent world to get published. Um, it was that fourth book that got published. And then it did, and I mean, it's sitting back on the shelf behind me. I'm man enough to admit most of the time I picked up that book for the first month, I teared up. The first couple times I definitely cried.
that's wonderful.
Because I was like, man, this was at that point, that was 2021. So I was 7 years into writing journey. And
Yeah,
7 years of taking it serious, not just 7 years of, I'll write a book.
yeah,
No, I mean, I spent hours every night when my wife at the time and my kids would go to sleep. That was my 6 night a week passion.
yeah,
So, yeah, to finally hold that book was just like, wow. And I say that to then go to the thing of, the next book came out. I was really excited to hold it. I didn't have that. I didn't have that wow moment. I didn't have that. I did it. My brain immediately said, good job, dude. Go get the next one done. I was excited. I was happy,
yeah,
but I didn't
yeah.
have, I did that first
The
experience is lost at that point.
Yeah, the first one, I don't know if you can ever really recapture that first book experience. That first time you see your cover,
Right.
as it pops into your email, first time you see the galleys come into your email,
Yep.
yeah, there's just all those firsts,
Yeah.
again and again and again and again. And first time you see it in the bookstore
Hmm.
or what have you, it comes in a box at your house, all those
Right.
things. It's so magical. And it's still exciting, like you
It
said,
is. Yeah.
but it is magical that
It
first
is that
time.
first time. Yeah. I agree. But that's okay because at least I think what that gives you an appreciation of as you kind of think about it, of how hard you worked. And it might not have that emotional tug at your heart with the future ones, but I will say every time I get to the point where I type the words the end, I mean, there's not too many other prouder moments in my life. I know the work's about to start to actually fix all the gibberish and
All the
crap I just
editing,
wrote.
yeah.
But for that night, I might even crack open a celebratory drink. It's not me, it's a cigar. It's normally I'll go sit in the
Yeah.
porch, smoke a cigar, be really excited, and then be like, I gotta start fixing this thing before I pay someone a bunch of money to really fix it. And I'm like, dang, take another puff and enjoy this thing for a few more minutes.
Are you one of the writers who, you start and then you just kind of blow through the first draft until you get it done, or do you kind of edit it as you go along?
I don't edit it as I go along. And what's interesting about you saying that is the first couple books I wrote very tight period of time. Like I worked on it 6 nights. And I think it's because my life, kids were a lot different. Again, I was married at the time. I had just a small window. As
Yeah.
life's changed and my kids grown up, my son's going to be 18 really soon, which
Yeah.
freaks me out. Freaks me out. But
Yeah.
I was talking the other day. I was like, "So," he goes, "Did you get me a birthday present yet?" I was like, "No, I need to talk to you about that." Because I told him for his 18th birthday, I said, "I'll get you a passport." Yeah, it wasn't just with our family dynamic. I wasn't able to get him a passport.
Yeah.
That's a long
Got
story.
it.
We don't want to go to that story. That's a depressing story. But I said,
Right.
"Well, at 18, he can get a passport because he's an adult." And I said, "I'll take you somewhere in the world. It can't be crazy, but but I can take you somewhere reasonable pretty much anywhere you want to go. That's, I'll make it work somehow. I'll sacrifice. I'll figure it out. So I said to him, I was like, well, you're getting the passport and you're getting the trip. And he's like, I swear he was like, yeah, I don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? Where do you want to go? He's like, I don't want to be like you and go like see Big Ben. And he starts listing these places I've been in the last couple of years. And I was just like, boy, nothing like, kicking me when I'm down or something. And I was like, there's
I guess.
gotta, it's all, he's a musician. He's a bluegrass musician. I said, okay, look, I was just in Edinburgh, Scotland for Thanksgiving because the kids are with their mom. And I actually took my mom and we went over to Europe. Um,
Mhm.
I said, I was one table away from the best fiddle player in Scotland. I know what bar she plays at on a regular basis. I'll take you to Scotland for a week, dude. Let's go to Scotland. He goes, that might not be a good idea. And I'm like, if my parents at 18 had been like, where in the world do you want to go? I would have been like, I've got the
Top
greatest
10.
in the world. Oh, I would have had a list ready because
Yeah.
I was actually I was supposed to visit Europe when I was 15. I think I was 15. I was in whatever your freshman year of high school would be, whatever that is.
Yeah. Sounds
I know it
about right.
depends, varies,
14,
depends on
15.
how you
Yeah.
go in, but I think I was around 15. And I'm dating myself a little bit here, but Gulf War, the first Gulf War was going on, and they basically said, State Department said, don't travel, even to Europe, don't travel.
Mm.
So they canceled the trip. I
Ah.
was like, I put the deposit down and everything. Heartbreak.
Yeah.
So fast forward 4 years, I guess it was, my freshman year of college, they announced one day during student meeting time or whatever. Used to always the school I went to, you actually met as a ensemble in the mornings with students, and they announced that they were doing a history tour in Europe for 3 weeks that summer, and it wasn't cheap. Um, and they announced what the trip was. They gave the details. Called my parents to talk to them, not to ask permission, just to tell them about it. Because I had been saving for years. I'd always been a worker, and I was going to buy a car. You couldn't have a car on campus till your junior year, so I didn't need to bring a car. But I was going to buy a pretty nice car my junior year. Get something nice.
Yeah.
I went down, put a deposit down, and I went to Europe and I paid for every cent out of my pocket. And most of my
Wow.
friends at the time
Mhm.
were like, man, we'd love to go, but we don't have the money. How are you paying for it? I said, that's my future car right there. I'm going to go to Europe instead of the car. Um, and I think I said this recently, either on a podcast or to someone in the last week. It was the greatest trip of my life. And
Yeah.
that's not a negative statement. That's not like, oh, you're saying at 19 you got the best and everything was downhill. No, I've had amazing trips, but I
Mhm.
knew it when I was over there, how often at that age do you get to go to the Vatican? Do you get to go see Milan? Do you get to go to Switzerland and have a snowball fight at the St. Bernard Pass in the end of June, where Napoleon was, and just you know uh, go through Paris, go through London. So we worked our way through Europe for 3 weeks, and I was not wise at that age, but I was attentive enough to know that this is not a thing that normally happens for some
Yeah.
people ever in their
Oh,
life,
good.
but
Yeah, you
definitely
had
at
an
that age in
awareness.
life. So
Yeah. Nice.
and I think that really started the fire of like, cool. But again, almost like with the books, okay, that was great. I had a blast. Didn't satisfy. I want to go see something else. So
Yeah. Now, do you travel with your books? Do you travel to the different places that take place in your book
I
or?
try to.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as many places as I can. So where I've only been to about a dozen countries, and I know that's not a few amount, but for some people
Hmm.
that's nothing, and for other people that's an amazing amount. But so I'll try to set things when I can in either
Yeah.
places I've gone or places I want to go. So for instance, the trip to Ireland, I knew I wouldn't have my kids for the week, and I made a deal with myself after the divorce because I've got a great group of friends, and every other year I don't have my kids for the full week for Thanksgiving. And the first year it happened, I went and had Thanksgiving dinner with a friend and his family, and they embraced me like I was a family member. It was great. But I
Hmm.
said, I knew my kids were 30 minutes away. And yes, I could go see them for a little bit or exchange some time, but I can't really get that Thanksgiving experience in a few minutes. So after that first Thanksgiving, I said, you know what? Every 2 years when I don't have my kids, I'm going to A, leave the country, and B, Thanksgiving Day will be in a country I've never been to.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So, and we'll see if I can keep doing it, for the
Yeah.
period. And my kids will be grown. My daughter's 13. So I only got probably like two or three more Thanksgivings, anyways, that would be custody Thanksgivings with her. But
Yeah.
so 2 years ago, I went to Wales and
Beautiful country.
friends of mine are in a band. I went and saw the band.
Yeah.
The security guy who does Spear Talk, John Guarnieri, this is under the Spear Talk network. Me, him, and Barry from the band Shinedown were out at Giovanni's, this Italian restaurant on Thanksgiving night. We went out clubbing at this place called Retro after that. So Thanksgiving night, I'm drinking, having a good time, and it wasn't running away from the reality of I can't see my kids, but it was a good memory in place of
Yeah.
knowing I'm so. And so fast forward to 2 years later, this Thanksgiving, I had reached out to my mom earlier this year and said, "Hey, Thanksgiving's this year, and I don't have the kids." And she got excited, thinking I was going to say, "I'm coming up to Connecticut to see you." And I said, "Let's go to Ireland." She goes, "Really?" I said, "Seriously, my treat. You've done so much for me over the years. I'll take you to Ireland."
That's
So
amazing.
I ended up adding on a couple days in London and a couple days in Scotland as well, because I'm like, we're here. Let's try to see some other stuff. So we went to London and we took a train up to Edinburgh and we flew over to
Yeah.
Dublin. So
Yes.
Thanksgiving Day this year, we were at St. James Gate at Guinness. It was a glorious Thanksgiving Day. Glorious
Yeah,
Thanksgiving
yeah,
Day.
yeah.
So
Spend Thanksgiving up at the top of the Guinness in the restaurant up there
they
where you can.
closed it. So
Oh
it was
no!
closed. So I was gonna have
Oh
dinner up
no!
there and we go up to the top floor and there's a person standing there, they're like, "Can we help you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't need reservations, do I?" They're like, "Oh, we closed at 6 o'clock." And it was like 7. It's like, why'd you close early? Because it was a Thursday. And I guess the restaurant only stays open on the weekends this time of year
Um,
because the tour not as many tourists.
yeah,
So what was funny was we ended up going to this pub not far from our hotel. We took a car back. We walked to the to St. James, but then we took an Uber back towards the hotel. We just roamed around and you've been to Dublin, I guess.
yeah,
Okay. So
yeah,
there's literally a pub. Every third door is a pub,
yeah,
so no
yes,
lack of beer and actually really good food. So,
yeah.
so I had a Guinness stew for Thanksgiving night, at this pub and it was fantastic. It was a wonderful experience. So
Yeah.
I get to plan out, where do I want to be into. I actually have a friend in Brazil the other day that said he had saw something I posted on my newsletter about going away every other Thanksgiving. He said, "Dude, come to Brazil." And I'm like, Brazil's, I've never been. Maybe that's Thanksgiving, what's that, 2027? So,
Be a
we'll
lot
see.
warmer down there.
Yeah, well, yes, it would be because they're south of the
Southern,
equator.
yeah.
That is true.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they
See?
will be in the
Bonus.
summer. But I
Bonus.
actually do like the cold. That's the thing. I don't like it, but I don't like tropical heat. So, but I don't know.
Uh,
We'll see.
well, that would be, well, it'd probably be more springish.
Yeah, I think we'd be okay. I'm not going to like
Yeah.
Panama. I'd like to go to Panama at some point, but it's kind of like to me what the Great Wall would be, like fly in, see it for like 36 hours and be like, I'm good, I'll
Jump
see
up
maybe
to
the
the
Forbidden.
Galapagos. You get some nature and go over to the Galapagos while you're down
Exactly. Exactly.
there.
So, yeah, so that trip though back in college really I think kind of planted that seed to
Yeah,
really
that
enjoy
bug, the
getting out in
travel
nature.
bug.
Yeah.
So
And
your son's not going to be your travel buddy, is what I'm hearing.
I don't know. I
Maybe
might.
later.
Maybe, but here's what's funny about it. Not, kind of like not showing much interest in many of the places. So the idea that I threw out to him recently that he's warm to the idea is let's go to Iceland. He's like,
Oh yeah,
this sounds interesting. And they actually go out, they have a direct flight to Reykjavik out of Raleigh, which,
nice.
Raleigh's not close, but it's not, well, I don't even know, 3 hours, 3.5 hours,
Yeah, not too
whatever.
bad.
So that's much better than catching a flight from Charlotte to then go to New York to then that would make more sense to me. So I might win
Yeah,
him over. But
Northern
he's a
Lights,
musician.
be
So he thinks he
amazing.
wants to live in a conversion van and like tour for a while. And I'm like, and you don't want to go to like London? Really?
Right, right.
I'll take you to Abbey Road, man. Come on, what in the world? But I'm also dad and I'm not cool. I'm not hip. I'm not any.
Yeah, you lost the sparkle. You lost the sparkle.
Probably when he was 6. It's probably by 7 he's kind of like, oh yeah, you're the
Uh,
authoritarian that just tells me
it'll
what to
come back
do.
around. It'll come back around.
Yeah, well, he has been my concert buddy for all these years. So we have that's one thing that him and we've seen, shoot, man. Garth Brooks and the Eagles and Rolling Stones and yeah, we U2 with the Sphere. That one
Nice.
was pretty remarkable. That was a cool one.
Mm.
I don't know if he'll come with me. He says he is, but in May I got tickets for Metallica and AC/DC, and they're not near each other either. They're not like the same weekend, but it's one's in Nashville, one's in Charlotte, and I'm like, okay, I gotta figure out how am I getting to Nashville for this, and where are we going to that? And I told him, hey, I got two tickets. You want to come? Yeah. I'll ask him again in April. But like, we're going, right? Or do I need to, they weren't cheap. Do I got to find a concert buddy here at the last
Yeah.
minute? So,
Oh, fun. Fun. Yeah, no, that's cool. That's neat
yeah.
that you have that to do with your son. I'm sure you probably got something that you do with your daughter too. That's cool that you
Yeah. So,
have that connection like that. That's very
yeah.
nice.
Well, it's been as many things as that have been hard in the last several years. You kind of, it also makes you realize what's important. And so you kind of go back to, what's
Yeah.
important and you draw on that. And, the hard things still happen. That doesn't make
Mhm.
them go away. But when you do have something, positive to hold on to, it really does help. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Good for
so
you.
speaking of positive, and you didn't start writing until later, which that's not really later, honestly, because that's the other thing is most published authors I have talked to over the years, I've very few were published at 20 years old or 18 years
Yeah.
old or even 24, 25. Most of the time, like maybe like for yourself, it's like it's almost a second career,
Yeah.
um, which I think is necessary because I think you need that. I think that having that wealth of life experience, even if you don't go travel or whatever, you learn
Mhm.
people. And
Right.
if you learn people, it helps you better create diverse characters,
I
which
agree. That
eventually,
lived
or not
experience.
eventually, what's gonna hold a reader? Yeah, setting is important, but if you've got a character that within the first page someone goes,
Mhm.
well, that's an interesting character,
Yeah.
you hooked them. You hooked them. You just got to keep them hooked by not dropping the ball in the
Right.
course of writing.
Yeah, it's been an interesting transformation for me because in my earlier books, and I really don't know how readers think of them as far as characterization,
Hmm.
of my characters, but I was so concerned that I would let a plot thread drop, because my first series, it's a different hero and heroine in the three books, but I
Okay.
had an overarching villain in that series.
Which one was that?
And
Which series?
that was the Nexus Spy
The
Master.
Nexus
That
Five.
was the
Okay, so I do have them in
historical,
order here. Okay, good.
yeah, the historical one.
Okay,
And I was just so afraid I was going to screw up the plot, just big time, and just be so embarrassed by it
right.
that building the characters just wasn't part of my mindset.
Okay.
I could see them and I understood them, but
Mhm.
that's not where I put my focus. It wasn't until later
Yeah.
into my writing career that I really put a lot of emphasis on character development.
Hmm.
Again, I've never had anybody complain about their cardboard characters. So
Right.
maybe I did okay, but I think I'm doing better now.
Yeah.
I still stress over the plot stuff, but I give the characters equal time now than I used to.
Now, are you a plotter or a pantser or a librarian?
I think I'm like somewhere in between,
Somewhere in the middle. Okay.
I have to know my characters
Hmm.
as far as who they are, um, what they look like. I have to have maybe like a backbone until that midpointish and have kind of fuzzy idea of the
Okay.
end. And then as I start writing, I tend to now, the process has changed as you know,
Sure.
as you get more mature with your writing, but I tend to maybe plot out two or three chapters ahead of where I'm writing,
Yeah.
and I just keep moving like that
Sure.
until I reach the end.
Yep.
So that's kind of where I'm at right now. It'll probably change again, but that's where I'm at now.
No, I think that's kind of a normal growth because just real quick, I started as a pantser 100%. I would always know the beginning in my mind because I always came up with a title, and the title was kind of what drove me. It kind of gave me
Hmm.
my way of going forward. But I knew how I wanted to end it, and I had but end it being the last chapter, I had no clue
Yeah.
what I was going to do with the next 80,000 words. And
Yeah.
I would just every night, but that got me excited. And I
Yeah.
never, those first three books didn't get published. So maybe I did back myself into a corner because I didn't get them published, but I never felt like I was backed in a corner like, oh, I got to go rewrite all this stuff
Yeah.
because I messed anything up. I was always able to pivot. Now that I'm they're not all published, obviously, but now I've got six completed books under my belt, four that are in some stages, a couple of them being almost halfway. Um, I've developed a different philosophy. So almost like what you have. So on my phone, and also last night I'm looking at my couch, which is across from me. You know, lovely studio, and it's if I
Yeah,
turn the camera around, people like that's where you film that thing.
I
It's like,
know.
yeah, it's a little nook and corner. It's a couch over there, a TV over there, a work desk over there.
Yeah,
Um, but I'll sit there sometimes now and I'll be like, okay, where do, what characters do I need? Because I try to, obviously alternate where I'm not just going with my main protagonist every
yeah,
chapter, trying to blend them in. So like last night I was working on a chapter and I said, ooh, the next one really needs to be this. So I did a page insert and chapter XX, and then I just put in bold, and I always do that, I'll bold, bring in blank, blank, blank from this. And it's my footnote when I start writing tonight, when I finish that other chapter.
yeah,
I'm like, ah, that's where I go
yeah,
next. And most of the
yeah,
time I'll
yeah.
have two or three of those in a row where I'll
Kind of
kind of be
kickstart your
like,
brain a bit. Yeah.
yeah, that way I just kind of stay on focus because I'll end up finding sometimes like in the first few published books even that when I went back and finished that first draft and thought
Mhm.
this is God's gift to, literature now. Here comes the fame and fortune and all that. Yeah, right. And I start that first edit and I go, the heck was I thinking? I didn't finish this. I had someone, I sent out some chapters, this is about 3 years ago. I sent out some chapters to someone to proofread for a book, and they came back like, yeah, really solid, but go look at chapter, and I forget what it was, chapter 17. You got like three paragraphs, and then it just goes to chapter 18. I jumped ahead the night before and I never went back and finished the previous chapter. And then that's like a year, whatever later after I've already like done all this stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what the heck was I doing with that chapter? I had to actually like concoct something or jump it. I don't remember what I did with it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. One of the well, my first book was completely pantsy. I mean, I didn't even know there were terms or, how to do it or anything
right.
like that. So that was completely a pantser. And I ended up at one point I wrote myself into like a corner, and I'm like, oh, that will never work. And so I had to cut
Right.
like 13,000 words. And then I went on. But the last, I think maybe three books, I I bought a Remarkable. I don't know if you've seen those or not. It's
Oh,
like a
no.
a tablet, and it's supposed that it's kind of marketing for it is that it feels like you're writing on paper, but it's like a tablet.
Interesting.
And there's something about starting a new chapter on my computer, at the keyboard, that I just kind of sit and stare for way, way too long.
Hmm.
And so with the Remarkable, what I'll do is I'll just start writing,
Gotcha.
and there's just a better connection there.
Hmm.
And it's neat because it has a kind of a conversion where it will convert my handwriting to text.
Text.
So I can just upload it to my Mac and
Hmm.
into Scrivener, and
Okay.
so I don't have to retype it all, right?
Yeah.
I have to clean it up a little bit, but I don't have to retype it all.
Right.
And they also have a place where you can just kind of do a little bit of free flow mind mapping, that sort of
Okay.
thing. So if I'm trying to work out a sticky plot thing, I'll do
Hmm.
mind maps and just kind of, try to figure out where it's going.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll do little pictures, just trying to visualize what I'm doing. And it's horrible. Nobody will ever see those things. But
As they
so
shouldn't.
yeah. So, it's just been it's kind of a fun creative way
Hmm.
of writing. And then once I get the chapter started, it's into Scrivener, then I can kind of take it away and finish the chapter.
Yeah.
But so that's what I've done. I think maybe the last three books,
Okay.
and I don't know. I enjoy it. I think I'll probably keep doing it that way.
Do it until it
Because
doesn't work. I mean, if it works
yeah,
for you, what's the reason for
why
changing
not,
it?
right?
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you find a flow and then but something happens, or my biggest thing that happened the last couple of years was I would start something and then another opportunity would open up and I'd put it aside.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
just with getting the 3 book contract with the publisher, that kind of was like sudden. I was already working on something else. So that was kind of like actually. ironically enough, now that it just popped in my head, I was working on the novel I'm writing now. I was about 20,000 words into that when I got the publishing offer. And it was going to be, it's just a change I just did recently. It was going to be, I'd already written The Body Man, obviously, and I'd been trying to get it for a couple of years, and that was finally what got me my contract. But one of the things one of the early readers had said as they read the book was there's this character Merci, and I'm like, oh no, I know who you're talking about, my female assassin. I got it. They're like, I want to know more about her. So I had started figuring out what her backstory was because when I wrote her in The Body Man, she was very one-dimensional. Female assassin, what she looks like, that kind of stuff. She's very efficient, she's lethal, that's it. I didn't know why an attractive young woman would go into that field. So I
Hmm.
spent some time figuring out what was her background that would make her go, "Hey, I want to kill bad people for a living or good people. They're normally not good, but I do it for money."
Yeah.
So I figured it all out and I started writing this book, and then boom, that was February of 2021 or March of 2021. I get this book contract, and then all of a sudden I have to go back to the body man world. Then I have to go write Breach of Trust, which I had started already, but I had put aside. I have to finish that and all this stuff happens. Well, I finally this year were like, "Ah, I can go back to Mercy's story." And all along, I was just going to make it a standalone for her, give her kind of her own series. But as I've kind of delved into the publishing world and I've learned how things worked and series and all that, I kept wanting to give cameos and bring the body man into her story because they have a connection. And as I was writing this fall and even the last month or so, I'm like, I think this just needs to be the third edition for the Body Man. I've gone back and added stuff for him and more of a segue into how Breach of Trust ended
Hmm.
into the beginning of this as well. And then at the same time, she's still having her own issues, and her and the Body Man are going to have to work together or kill each other. One of the two things is going to have to happen. So they better find a way to be nice. But that was something that literally I started in 2020. And here it is now 2025, and I'm just building on it, and I'll have it done here hopefully by the end of February. But that was something I don't think I could have done 10 years ago. When I started a project, I had tunnel vision, and I couldn't think that you could put something down for a few years and pick it back up. Um, I've got that ability or that confidence now that no, I can put it away for a while. And I think that helps because if I put something away, the first thing I always do is I start from scratch. Like page one, start rereading it. And then I
Uh,
start editing it as I'm going along. Oh, why did I say that? Change this. Why do I have this character in here? And by the time I get to where I left off, it's the same general book, but it's been enhanced by me being a better writer a couple years later.
yeah. It's amazing when you have those kind of partial manuscripts and you go back
Mm.
to them and you have this realization that you how much you've grown as a writer
Right.
and you're like, thank God.
I know. When I finished my first book, I thought I was a big deal and I thought it was going to get me fame and fortune. Um, I have since gone back and read it a couple years ago. So, it's been that was 8 years after I had written it. I probably went back and read it and I just put my head down and like,
Yeah.
I know why this didn't get published. Now, at the time, I was like, what's wrong with these agents? This is gold. This is
Yeah.
gold.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't gold.
Yeah, I think unless you're TJ Newman, most first books are a little cringy whenever you go back and read them.
Well, and that was so I want to talk about your series and stuff, but do you have books that are early editions of what you read that no one will ever see? Do you have some of those?
You know, I was I don't know if I was lucky or because we're talking about cringe-worthy books, but the first book novel that I finished
Hmm.
is my first book that got
Okay.
published. So um, I guess I was lucky in that, but it's funny because that was published through a traditional publisher.
Right.
And then a couple of years ago, I got the rights back to those three books,
Hmm.
and I went through and re-edited it
Yeah.
myself, and then
Sure.
I gave it to an editor to re-edit it, and
Right.
I was able to cut out 20,000 words.
Yeah. I believe it. I believe it.
So I was a little verbose, let's say, I guess, on that first book.
So my first one that's not published, I might publish it one day under my imprint because it's a very good story, and it is an Omega Group story actually. It's a Troy Evans and Omega Group, which I now have their series out, two of their books out. Um, I think it was 128,000 words. The second book was definitely over 100. I don't remember what the second one was. I remember the third one I wrote, and again, that one's still not published. My only goal, Tracy, was keep it under 100,000 words. That was not my only goal, but that was the
Yeah.
don't do that
There you
again
go.
because you're going to
Yeah.
have to tear this thing up. And if I was a Boy Scout, my son was a Scout. I was in the Scout leadership, but if I was an actual Boy Scout, this would be Scouts honor,
Yeah.
Scouts
Yeah.
honor truth. When I typed, I don't know if I had to type the word the end or the final word. I can't remember, but when I looked down at the end, it said 99999. I was one word short of 100,000, and I just said,
Beautiful.
I can't add a single thing. I can start
No,
cutting, but I can't
no.
add a single word.
Yeah.
Of course, it didn't get published, and now, ironically, so many more books in that I've done, and like what I'm working on to finish and have out this summer. My goal is 80,000 words because I go by word count for me.
Yeah.
That's about 300 pages thereabouts. I'm bringing it down, and I think that's because
Mhm.
the older I get, maybe the less concentration I have. I don't know, or I want shorter. And I mean, I've got all Clancy's books back here behind me.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
Tom Clancy.
Yeah.
I don't think I could read a Tom Clancy book right now in my life because I'd probably be like, oh my goodness, Tom, you don't need 7 pages. You need like 3 lines. We got it.
Yeah.
We got it. But I
Yeah. Yeah.
loved it
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely different reading preferences these days for sure. I think
yeah.
back to some of the books that I just, consumed within a day or two back in the day. And I actually, maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, went back and read the very first fiction book that I had ever read. And I couldn't get through the first chapter. It was just like
Yeah.
so dense, and it kind of hurt my heart. I'm like, oh, I was really kind of looking forward to, going back and revisiting these characters.
Right.
And yeah, I think that 80,000-ish is becoming the sweet spot, even for
Yeah.
thrillers,
Right.
for a lot of readers. We're in the age of short attention spans and things like that.
Yep.
And, folks don't want to be, it's because sometimes, and I know this with even my own books, you can get redundant in
Hmm.
there.
Right.
And so yeah, yeah, I think that's probably a good goal point for you.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna go for. Um, so talk to me about your Steel Ridge series, and because as I was trying to look a little behind the scenes and see I think Endgame was the last book that came out.
Yes.
Okay, so I did my homework
Yeah.
on that. But where I was looking at it was you had the Kingstons, you had the Blackwells, so that all fed from the Steel Ridge as the kind of the
Yeah.
hierarchy.
Yeah, there are so the original series was called The Steels,
Okay.
and there were seven Steel siblings, is how that worked out.
Okay.
And from there we have the Kingstons, which are some cousins, and then we have the Blackwells, which are the black sheep cousins. And so that world we've got we did a series they were called Christmas Capers, which
Yeah.
they're just, nice little Christmas short stories that
Hmm.
have cameos of these
Okay.
characters. And there are 12 of those, 12 Days of Christmas.
There you go.
Um,
Very good
and I
marketing right there.
we try. With all of that, I think there are about 30 books in the series, with
Wow.
the novellas and the short stories and
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that we have. So yeah, it's as you said, it's Endgame is the last book in the
Hmm.
series. For right now, it's going to be the last book. I don't know that we're going to start anything new in that world at
In that
this
world, yeah.
point. We have been so focused on books in that series for so long that Adrian and we had some personal projects that we had really put on the back
Hmm.
burner, and we're very keen on writing those and getting those out in the world. And so that's where we're at now with the series.
So talk to me about because I'm currently working on a project with another author, and it's kind of taking a while. We've been working on it for a while, and we make little progress, and we don't do anything for a while, and we're trying to get our heads around it because I know some co-authors personally, and they've kind of explained to me how their process was.
Mhm.
But how did that work for you? Like how is it a challenge to find someone that you can kind of jive with to tell a story?
Yeah, the way we did it is a bit differently than, say, like Andrews and Wilson.
Yeah,
They are they are writing in the same book,
they're
and
symbiotic or
it's like
something.
one voice, even though it's
Right.
two authors, it's one voice, and you
Right.
wouldn't know which author's doing which chapter.
Correct. Yeah.
For us, the way that we did it, there were originally three authors in writing in the Steel Ridge world.
Hmm.
And the way that we grew up, we were all like pre-published. We started a blog back in the day whenever those were popular, and then we moved into writing in this world together. And what we did is that we mapped out the series,
Okay.
and we each decided which book that we would take. So at the time well, like with the Blackwell's series, which is this last
Hmm.
series that Adrian and I did the first book, she did the second book, I did the third book, she did the fourth book, and I did the fifth book. So I
Hmm.
bookended the series.
Got to get the
And
grammar right, Tracy. Come,
yeah.
someone will knock us.
You think I would know.
I
um
wouldn't, trust me. I need an editor.
So that's how we did it. And for like the characters, the way that we did
Hmm.
it is we would claim characters.
I love it.
So for in-game, my characters were Kayla and Ash. So
Okay.
I claimed those characters, and what that means basically is even though those two characters might have cameos in Adrian's book,
Hmm.
I would read all of their chapters and their passages and things like that, and I'm like, Zeke, that doesn't really sound like Zeke. I don't
Okay.
think he would say something like that. I don't think he would react that way.
Right.
I had veto power,
Yeah.
so
That
I
makes
could
sense.
either tweak it or I could zap it, kind
Yeah.
of thing. And
Good.
so that really worked out great for us. And as far as we built this world, and we it's actually a business for us. We have an LLC, and
Hmm.
we also, when there were three of us, if two people thought it was a good idea, it was done,
Yeah.
and that worked out for us as well.
Majority
So
rules. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's a I love, we started it before it became kind of a business force. We were brainstorming partners.
Hmm.
And that's where I think we grew to trust each other.
Hmm.
I think what you were saying is that you've got to find somebody you trust,
Yeah.
or
Absolutely.
somebodies if it's more than one person. And we each had different strengths,
Right.
and we brought that to the process.
Yeah.
And we don't really do that brainstorming anymore, as we've matured and we've
Hmm.
gotten busier and doing other projects and things like that outside of Steel Ridge. And I miss it. We
Yeah.
would have those brainstorming sessions around a conference. So
Hmm.
we go in a few days before the conference and do these
That's great.
brainstorming sessions, and I love them, and if I could ever, capture that again, I
Yeah.
would definitely do it, because having more than one brain in your book is a good thing. Is a
Absolutely.
really good thing.
What was the time span of when those started versus Endgame coming out last year? How long of a time span was that?
We first brainstormed the very first novel. We did it actually in Asheville. We had a girls get together weekend in Asheville, because we knew we were going to set it here in North Carolina. The whole series is set in North Carolina.
Did they stay at the Grove Park Inn?
No, no, we did like a little, that would have been cool though.
I
That would have
killed
been
some.
really
I
lovely.
say that because the first chapter of my book coming out this summer, I kill someone in the Grove Park Inn.
Did you?
I had to go do a little
Nice.
re-see and be like, where do I kill? Oh, this is a good place
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
die.
there's that would be a great place to kill. It's
Good
so good.
location.
But so I guess the brainstorming, I'm trying to remember. I think it was either at the end of 14 or at the beginning of 15.
Okay.
So 2015, and then we
About
published the
10 year
first
span.
book in September of 2016.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And I guess with
So yeah.
that, especially with three working, yeah, you can do that because That's the other thing that when you kind of start looking at it, even if you do this as a full-time thing, it's like you'll hear people every now and then that can put out two or three, 3 or 4 books a year, and you're
Yeah.
just like, I mean,
I've never been able to.
you'd
I've
have to
always
write
been,
8 hours a day
yeah,
every day.
yeah.
That's hard.
Even writing full time now, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm just I consider myself a slow writer compared to what a lot of folks can do. But I'm maybe like a book and a half,
Mhm.
something like that a year.
I can do two. I did two this last year, but one of them was done before the year, so I didn't have to write two in a year in 2024. I don't think I can maintain that. I was thinking I'd maintain that for next year. I thought I would come out with Supreme Justice, and then I'd come out with a origin story for Troy Evans, which is actually done.
Mm,
It's an earlier
yeah.
book I wrote, but it needs fixing.
Yeah.
Um, I'm backing off on that now because I'm like, I got to live life a little. And
Yeah,
I
sure.
also, as I've gotten to do this, and each book I keep hearing from readers, it's your best book. So I know I'm getting better at it,
Hmm.
but I also don't want to ruin that. I don't want to like throw a stinker in there of, well, I only spent a couple months fixing this book I wrote years ago. It's like, no, I've got to treat even a project that I believe in that I think I can fix
Hmm.
almost like it's a new novel because I have to look at it with fresh eyes and I have to give it the time it needs. So yeah,
And
I
you want to
think
still enjoy it, right?
right.
Even though it's, a second job for you,
Yeah,
you still want to enjoy the process, and you don't want to get
right.
so burned out that you stop enjoying it because
Yeah,
business is hard enough.
yeah,
Let
it
one
really
part of the
is.
process be fun, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. And like we were talking offline, that's the part I've had to learn. And I learned it even before I got the small publisher. I was starting to, um, yeah, it was 2000. Speaking of Andrews and Wilson, I think it was 2017 is the first time I met Brian, maybe. Might have been 18, but I think it was 17. And we were talking, and he was very generous with his time with me, and we were going to kind of going over my projects and all that. And then I think when I saw him in 18, I hadn't got an agent still for my first book. I was pitching my second book, and he was just like, maybe you should just self-publish the first book. I did that. Brian did that, and then we got together and started a series. And I'm just like, I don't want to commit that much work to it. Because I was smart enough at that point to realize it's probably a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah.
Even if you're
Yeah.
outsourcing a lot of stuff, it's still a lot of work to have the
Yeah.
business side. And that was probably 2017 Eric. If 2024 Eric, this last year, could have gone back and visited 2017 Eric, he would have said, "You were right. It's a tremendous amount of work." I d- I might have said do it though. I might have said do it, but um, like I was mentioning earlier about how a lot of writers don't find their find their voice and don't write until later in life. I wasn't ready to at that point in life. I was
Hmm.
just little did I know I was about ready to go through a divorce, and that
Yeah.
during that period of time, I didn't write for a year. I mean, I wrote, but I didn't write. Like I wrote just anger. I was
Hmm.
mad. I was upset. I was hurt. I was frustrated. So I would write stuff and I'd read through it, a week later, a month later, and be like, I'm going to jail if I put this out. I can destroy this. What am I thinking? And
Delete, delete, delete.
yes, wipe clean, get all this stuff out of here. What am I doing? And it was probably like my therapeutic way of just working through life, but
Sure.
I didn't,
As most books are, right? I mean, if what we're going through
absolutely
is
is.
a lot of times reflected in our books. I
Yeah,
can go back and read, passages in my books and know exactly what was going on in my life at that time to influence that. So,
right. Well,
yeah,
you
it's
you were asking earlier about if I'm able to visit all the places I write about or try to go to as many. So if after planning that trip with my mom to Ireland and doing all the research of what's there, and by then I was pretty getting deep into picking Supreme Justice back up and working on it, I realized, man, there is a scene I can do, and I won't say where in Ireland because I don't want to give it away, but there's a scene in Ireland that would be fabulous, and this would be a tax write-off because I'll go research.
beautiful.
So so I
Beautiful.
actually I wrote it. I wrote that particular scene. I started it in Ireland and then I finished it on the way back across the Atlantic. I got
Nice.
done. I reread it myself, made some edits, made some tweaks, and my mom was sitting next to me, and we're on a 9-hour flight back to Charlotte. So I handed her the laptop. Mom, read this. Tell me what you think. So, give her time. I got busy doing something else, so I'm not staring at her, like waiting to see if she's crying or mad or whatever.
Yeah.
Handed me the computer back, and she's like, "That's good. That's really good." I'm like, "Okay,
Oh,
I got mom on it." The readers will get to read that here sometime in the summer. But,
nice.
but yeah, if I can put real places into where I've been. I mentioned Grove Park Inn for the next book as well, and then I have a scene taking place in downtown Hendersonville. I had an office in downtown Hendersonville for years. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
and so, I used to go to McFarland's Bakery and Dry Falls Brewery and just all the other places up and down Main Street. And I'm like, that would be a good setting for a book. So I kind of put some of my characters in there. And part of it, too, to kind of give that head nod to a place that was important to me that I'd love people to go
Yeah.
visit. So,
Maybe that'll be the book that just, launches you into the stratosphere and there'll be a statue of you in the middle of town there. It could happen. It could happen.
if Netflix has a lot of zeros or Amazon Prime,
That's
I'm
right.
open. I'm open to negotiations. So that's
Hometown boy makes it, you
Well,
know?
it's funny. That's the most common question I get from people that don't understand the publishing world or writing and all that. They're like, A, why isn't your Body Man series been made into something or why hasn't it been bought?
Yeah.
And B, that would just set you up for life, wouldn't it? And I just laugh at them and go, you have no idea. Some people, and I know multiple people that have gotten seven-figure deals. It's out there.
Mm.
I also know quite a few people that have gotten money for sure, but not quit your job money,
Right,
not
right.
go buy a
Nice
Lexus money.
vacation money.
Yeah, yeah, basically, maybe you could take the world to Disney World, Disney World, as
Yeah,
long
yeah,
as
yeah.
you don't go too extravagant. You know?
Right, right.
So that's the side of the business. Again, you have to learn the business and realize, okay, and I was talking to a guest about this the other day for another podcast episode, and it's like that's where if you get into this with the intentions of riches you probably have the wrong intentions. This is
Mm,
about passion that you love to tell stories.
yeah.
Um, and maybe those
The,
stories can make a living for you as well.
yeah. Yeah, the riches, if they come, is just kind of like the icing or the cherry, for
Yeah,
sure. I mean, it's nice. It's
right.
nice when the money's there for sure.
Sure.
So,
My,
I
my
wish I could say that I'm just in it for the creative part, but I do like seeing money in my bank account
oh
too.
yeah,
So,
100%. Well,
yeah.
I'm always open that I have a nine to people that I've mentioned it before. I have a 9 to 5 job. My boss is super supportive of my evening hobby and buys my books and when's the next one coming out. And every now and then he'll ping me and be like, "So when you quitting?" And I just go, I think you got me for a while. I think you
Yeah.
got me. The
Yeah.
the, the last one didn't fill the bank account up, complete overflowing. So we're good. I need
Yeah.
my day job still.
You'll get there. You'll get there. You're building a readership and
Yes.
you're doing the marketing and it's getting, just getting it out in front of enough people.
Yeah.
And then if you're very lucky and a book talker talks about it, there you
I
go.
know. You
It's
never
made.
know. Well, and
Unless
I
it goes away here in a few days, but
I know. I don't. I think someone's gonna. I think worst case scenario. Was it Mr. Wonderful or whatever? There's an offer out there to buy it for $20 billion or whatever. I don't, and I would think the people that own it would rather get 20 billion than have it just shut down completely. Although I guess
seems
Trump
like
could. Well, I don't think Trump can restart it. I think you have to have Congress for that. So I don't know. It's
yeah.
going to be.
It'll
It's
be
going to be
interesting.
very interesting. So
It's there are a lot of people whose livelihoods depend on TikTok now, and I
yes,
bet they are just very, very fearful at this
e-
point because
exactly.
we're at the 11th hour here, It's
Yeah,
like,
and
wow.
it does something different that, even like shorts on Instagram or YouTube and that kind of stuff, just TikTok the way it's designed and set up, it's unique to the social
Yeah.
media, world. So yeah,
Yeah.
it will be very interesting. But and I appreciate the kind words. I'm gonna keep plugging. I actually posted something this morning as we're filming this on a Monday night. I posted this morning that this was actually and I didn't even realize it till I opened up something this morning. I opened up and I saw the Body Man had 750 ratings and reviews on Amazon, which was
Nice.
pretty exciting for me. And that's
That's
ratings that came over
that's
from
great.
the original version, and then when I
Yeah.
republished it. But as I was looking at the details and going, oh wow, 750, and I kind of scroll down, Yeah, my publication date for the second edition was January 13th, the day we're filming this
Ah,
last year.
yeah,
Um, so that was
nice.
exciting. And then I
Yeah.
checked, because I'm a publisher, I used to never want to look at numbers or know what the numbers are. Well, now I pay money every day for marketing, so I have to see if I'm hitting. Am I making my money? Am I making more? Am I hurting in some areas? Well, I happened to pull up Kindle Unlimited, KENP, and The Body Man. It probably wasn't today. It probably was yesterday. It hit it, but it hit over 1 million page reads for that one book.
Oh my gosh.
So
Just the body man.
just the body man, yeah. Now,
That's
for
amazing.
for perspective on that, it is amazing. So I'm not what I'm about to say is not a knock to it, but perspective on that, that's about 2,500 book reads. So a million
That's
page reads is not a million books. It's about 20, but 2,500 page read or book reads is still
for
a
one
pretty
book
big
in a
accomplishment. Yeah,
year's time. That's
yeah. My
you
other
know,
ones are
whatever
nowhere near.
you're doing something good there because it's
Well,
getting it in front of people.
it's still the most read. And so my agent is actually out in, or my agent, sorry, my editor's out in Greece, Jonas Saul, and I had him on the podcast. That's a good episode for people to watch as well, just for how kind of things work behind the scenes and the
Yeah.
editing. So his series that he came out with, he ended up getting rejected because he had a female character in the storyline of what he was doing. They're like, that's never gonna sell. Um, he sold just shy of 1 million copies of that book.
Holy moly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I say that to people to let them know that even if you get rejected, even if someone doesn't believe in it, and they might have good reason to, maybe it is crap, maybe it's not good, maybe it's not going to sell, but this is such a subjective business that
Yeah.
one door closing might not be the end of the world for you because maybe you'll go independent with it and maybe you'll sell 1 million copies. It does happen because I know people now that have done it. So it is possible.
There, there are an infinite number of reasons why an agent or an editor doesn't pick up your book, and
Right,
probably three-quarters of those reasons have nothing to do with the quality of the writing.
right,
You just you just have to keep plugging away and find that one right person.
correct.
And yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it is.
I'm not saying it's not tough. As they say, you've got to build up a pretty thick skin. But
Yeah,
yeah, it just takes one, as I say.
it does take one. So, speaking of one, what are you working on next? What's your next one?
Oh, well, you were talking about you had a book that you've been working on or had worked on back in 20 and
Oh
it might
yeah.
be released in 5 years time. I've got you beat, Eric.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Because
The contest here.
I've had an idea for a thriller, not a romantic suspense, but a
Sure.
thriller. First came to me back in say 13,
Okay.
14, somewhere in there. And for various reasons I will not bore your audience with, I would pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down, pick it
Mhm.
up, put it down. And once Adrian and I decided that, we were gonna give Steel Ridge a rest and try and work on our own stuff, I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm doing this. I'm
Yeah.
doing this. I'm finishing this book. I'm going to get it edited, and my goal is to get it edited and everything before Thriller Fest. And I haven't decided if I'm doing Pitch Fest
I
yet.
was gonna just, that was my next question as you just said
I
that.
suck at the pitch, okay? I suck at the pitch.
Everybody sucks at the pitch,
But
pretty much. I got
so
rejected twice, so don't worry.
yeah. So we'll see. That's my goal is I'm going to try and get it ready for this spring and then start submitting it to agents and
Okay.
see how things go. I'm going to try and take it the traditional route, but
Yeah.
it's one of those projects that won't has never let me go.
Mhm.
I want to call it my passion project, but that just seems kind of woo-woo.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just one of those that I just keep thinking about, and I
Yeah.
know if I don't give it a shot, it'll be one of those regretful
Regrets.
things,
Yeah.
So
I really believe, yeah, no woo-woo in it. I really think sometimes there's ideas we have in our head that just takes the right time and it takes the right opportunity. And I think you have to finish those things because I do think you
yeah,
get to a point and be like, man, I had that one idea because maybe that will go nowhere. Maybe it won't get an agent. Maybe you self-publish it. Maybe.
yeah,
But maybe it's a seven-figure deal.
yeah,
Maybe, and if it's not that, you know what it guarantee it is? It's a sense of accomplishment. And
Yeah.
that's why I started this. I wanted to write a book. Yeah, I wanted Fiji too. I'm not stupid. But at the same time, I wanted to be able to, because I had started, and I've said this so many times over the podcast and interviews that I've been on other people's podcasts, is I literally, and I still have it on the computer that we're talking on, I have books, which is all current stuff and stuff I've been writing for the last like 10 years. And then I have a folder called old books. And it has got more folders under it than the current books folder. And it's
Yeah.
all these darn projects I started. And the only consistent to all of them is I never finished them. And
Did
so,
you find do you find that you get to a certain word count and then that's where most of them stop?
oh no. Oh no, I've got 3,000 words and I've got 60,000 word stuff.
Okay.
I've
All
got
right.
all over the, no, it's
Yeah.
just when
Okay.
I don't want to say it was laziness at the time because I've been a fairly disciplined person in a lot of aspects of my life. I think it was just part of maturity that I
Mm.
was not able to at that point um, do the resources correctly to be a dad, be a husband, have a
Yeah,
full-time
sure.
job, have a part-time
Yeah.
job sometimes on top
A
of the
lot.
full-time job,
Yeah.
that I
Okay.
just wasn't able to prioritize what I needed to work on. And I think at the time I was prioritizing my family over the writing for sure. But then what
Yeah.
I was doing, which I don't regret, I don't have really any regrets in life because they don't fix anything, they don't change anything. It just causes more consternation. Um, but I think at that point I wasn't disciplined enough. So what I would do is to de-stress, I would just like start writing something and get frustrated or not know where to go. And I just turn on the television and I would
Mm.
just watch shows or I'd watch sports. And that's the thing that's changed in the last like 10 years. I still watch stuff, trust me.
Yeah.
But I remind myself as I'm binge watching a show one Saturday night, and it's always after I've written actually. So I'll watch stuff, but I did my writing for the night. And if there's nights that don't, most of the time it's like I've abandoned my lover because I'm kind of like watching something and I hear this little voice going, "Don't you have a book you should be writing right now?" But I do think also you need to also take time to just kind of cleanse the palate and not be
Yeah.
doing it. And I think that's helpful for creativity. So
Yeah.
I've gotten a good balance in the last several years where I'll set deadlines for myself and like I have a word count deadline of where I need to be by the end of January so I can type the end by I don't know how many days we have in February this year. 28, I guess. I don't think it's a leap year. So by February 28th, I need to be sitting on my back porch with a cigar, done with that thing,
There you go.
and on March 1st starting to edit that thing. But it's aggressive, so okay, I got to make it happen.
Yeah.
Just creatively, I'll be able to do it. It's just a matter of taking the distractions out. And I also don't write when my kids aren't. Well, take that back. When my kids are here and they go to bed, I'll write. But
Mhm.
I would normally have like nights like tonight and Tuesdays. I normally don't have my kids. I have all night after work to write if after interviews or whatever. Um, I don't have that when I have my kids because when I have my kids, that's my priority. So it's
Yeah.
maybe I'll sneak in an hour after they go to bed but most of the time I'm tired because
Mm.
they go to bed
Long
and
day. Yeah.
amazingly, I don't have a housekeeper. This is crazy. So, oh, I do. He's right here. So
You.
I have to go clean the house. So it's like, dang, I
Yeah.
gotta do dishes and stuff. So,
So much. Yeah.
no.
Yeah. You're a good dad. That's wonderful that you continued even in their teenage years that you're continuing to prioritize them. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. I feel like it's the least I can do, but yeah, thank you for that. So, well, hey, I always end this with the same question, especially for a first time guest. I don't ask it for a repeat. I've only had two repeats, but I think you'd agree with me. Life's like a book. We have a first page, we have a last page. We don't know how many pages are in between that, which I believe is a blessing. But Tracy, you're a writer. You've penned quite a few books. You got a bunch of series out there. So you get to write your last page. What do you want that last page to say? Softball question, Tracy. Softball question. And there's no
Yeah.
wrong answer.
Okay. All right. Uh, Act two.
I love it. I love it. No, that I have never gotten
I
that
don't
one.
know.
I've gotten
Uh,
similar like ideas. Like I think Meg Gardner did a to be continued. I thought that was really clever.
me too.
Um,
Dang it.
I had someone. No, Act Two is one perfect. Act Two is better because then there's going to be a third act sometime after that. So that you're really. I think you got the winner there. I had someone tell me one time, and I don't remember who it was. It's horrible. That they want to be sitting on the. They kind of took it a different way, and there's no wrong way to take this question.
Yeah.
I want to be sitting on the porch in a rocking chair watching my grandchildren play, and I just keel over. And I'm like,
Oh, there you go.
that's a
Yeah,
good way.
yeah.
That's a good
Well, if
final
I could
thing.
add a photo in there, if I have like a little picture or something like that, it would certainly be me, walking off into the Blue Ridge Mountains or something like that. That'd be a perfect, that'd be
Uh,
a perfect.
some good trails to walk into, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
And to
for
just
sure.
see if there really is a Sasquatch on this side, or if he's stuck
Oh,
in.
there is. There
So
is. We have a festival in Marion. There is.
I need to come to that. You need to tell me about. How do I not know
Yeah,
about this?
yeah, Bigfoot Festival.
When?
They keep changing it.
Oh, they
So
change it. Okay.
it first started the year before the pandemic,
Okay.
and then they haven't really kind of settled into a month. I think it was in August, if I remember correctly, this year.
Okay.
But it's in the downtown Marion, and
If you can remember,
I
shoot me an
will.
email. Give
I'll
me a
look it
reminder
up.
when it is.
Yeah, I'll
So
look it up and let you
I even
know.
have a Chewbacca costume I could throw on. But, I probably can't fit in it because I've gotten fat. So I'll have another reason to lose weight this year. But that would be great.
Perfect. Yeah.
Well, Tracy, thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad we got to meet.
Oh,
Hope we can meet up in Nashville some point for dinner or whatever. If not, I
absolutely.
might do Thriller Fest this year. I'm leaning towards it for sure. So I'm got to work out
Yeah.
some logistics. Um,
It'll be great to see a familiar face there.
yeah, absolutely. Where can our listeners go to find your books and support you?
Oh, I think probably the easiest thing is just to go to my website, and that's where all my socials and, buy links and all that sort of thing is there. And it's just tracydevlyn.com.
Okay. We'll put it at the
Nice
bottom
and
here of
easy.
the screen for everyone so they can see it. And
Thank you.
thank you again for coming on.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. It was so great talking to you. It was a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Take care.